Hi, this is TapCat, and today we're going to finish our first coaster that we've built in our park. So far, it's okay. It's not certainly the worst coaster you could possibly build, but its excitement, while it's, in the green, it could definitely be higher. Its fear rating needs to be higher. Nausea, you can't complain about. It's super low. But I definitely feel like, we want to do better than this, because I definitely want this first coaster to be a noticeable moneymaker. Like this needs to be the engine that drives us for a little while. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the places on the track that generate the least excitement. Now, there's a very good chance that as we ramp that up, the fear will more or less naturally go up with it. That isn't always the case, but it often is. It's very likely that we'll end up with more nausea as well, but we have, a pretty decent amount of cushion before that becomes a problem. So I'm not too worried about that. Our plan is pretty simple. We're going to look at the parts of the track that are generating the least amount of excitement. And then we're going to rebuild those sections, trying to make them a little bit more juicy, a little bit more titillating to our audience. And then hopefully that will give us the, result we're looking for. So we're not going to rebuild the whole coaster, but we're going to try to just target the weakest areas and see how big of a boost that gives us. Now, the first thing to note is really the only part of the ride that people didn't find exciting at all is the initial lift when they're going up the chain before the first drop. There's not a lot you can do about that. You can try to shorten the amount of time by boosting the chain speed, which we did. But beyond that, you really just need to focus on the rest of the ride. So this next piece that we're working on, I felt like the biggest problem is that going up that hill, it just got a little too slow, and definitely moving slower is the bane of excitement. So I wanted to make the drop a little bit steeper. And then, I experimented with different fancy, like a helix and stuff like that. But as is often the case, it's extremely difficult if you're going fast at all to balance the excitement with fear and nausea. Like the fear and nausea kind of went off the charts because we were going fast and we went into a helix. So what I ended up going for instead is just a very simple fix where, again, like I just made the drop a little bit steeper and the climb up following that drop a little less tall so that we didn't bleed off as much speed. And really, this kind of reinforces the lesson that I've been learning with coasters, at least so far, which is that really moderation is typically what works best. You want to go fast, but you don't want to go too fast. And you want to turn, but you don't want to turn too sharp. And you want to drop, but you don't want to drop too vertical and all of that. Like the more kind of extreme you make it, the more G-forces you submit people to, the things like nausea and fear, it seems like they just go off the charts. So even though I'm very drawn to doing those things, it takes either, a tremendous amount of knowledge beforehand or an enormous amount of patience to do that and do it well. So adjusting this length of track, it definitely helped. We were able to push our excitement up a little bit, about 0.2. Maybe more importantly, we got the fear rating into the green, so that was nice. And the nausea is still very much under control. So once again, we could stop here, but why? Why not try and make this coaster better? The closer we can get to 7, or if we could even get it above 7 excitement, as long as we can keep the fear and nausea, around the same range, that should make the coaster way more attractive to our customers. and way more profitable to run over time. So we're going to go ahead and address the next section that had a relatively low excitement rating. This section after the first drop is very similar to the one we worked on before, in the sense that, again, it's not that it has a very low excitement rating, it just doesn't have a particularly high one. So I didn't feel like we needed to do anything radical necessarily. So once again, I just thought, let's go ahead and make this first drop a little bit steeper, build up just a little bit more speed. And then going into that turn, maybe that'll be enough to juice the excitement back up to solidly in the green, which is what we want. And it actually worked. Now, I'll be honest, a lot of times, I'm not used to my very first attempt at a fix being that effective. But again, I think it revolved around the fact that it needed more tweaking than it did overhauling. Another benefit of this particular change is that, that extra speed does not just go away when you come out of this turn. And so it wasn't just the excitement rating for the part of track immediately in front of that drop that increased. I saw a ripple effect, moving forward from there as well. So virtually the entire coaster got a small bump. Now the downside is, because you're going faster, you have to be even more careful about sharp turns or drops or things like that. But it definitely gave us a nice little bump. Now, in classic form, I immediately followed up what I consider to be a very efficient and well thought out change with a really foolish, ill-considered one. So, having made that drop steeper and all that, I thought, well, let's really take it up a notch. So I tried to take the track, following the area we were just working in, and make it just way more exciting, and adding in all kinds of fancy stuff. What I succeeded in doing is completely ruining the rating for the coaster, and, basically turning it from something that was pretty solid into something you would not want in your park. Now, after playing with it for a little while, I just realized I was completely going down the wrong track. So we hit undo a bunch of times and went right back to the state it was in, when we first finished that section of track right after the first drop, what I would consider to be the good change. And everything I tried to add after that, just boom, like it never happened. So I could have just deleted that from the video, but I wanted to show it because this is all part of the learning process, and it was part of what I tried to do with the coaster. Now at this point, I felt like I had done pretty much everything that I reasonably could. The coaster is certainly not perfect, but at the same time, I just didn't want to spend hours and hours working on it. It doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be, good. And short of stripping it down to nothing, I just wasn't sure how I was going to go a lot farther than this. All the ratings are in the green. And even though I wish it was a little bit more exciting, it's still, I think, well within the territory of what will draw people to it. So at this point, it made sense to go ahead and write it. So that is what we're going to do now. Now I have to say, I really love this feature in the game. I know it's not anything that hasn't been done before, but I'm actually quite surprised, not using VR goggles or anything like that, but just watching it this way, how engaging it is, how it's not exactly like being on a coaster, but it can be pretty fun doing this where you just watch one of them go through. Like just this first drop, you feel the anticipation and then that sense of like, whoa! Now that spot's a little rough. That's where we did autocomplete. But this also feels pretty cool. That up and down. And then this is like this little mini inversion. And we're done. It's a quick ride. I like that, actually. At least in the context of making money in the park. Okay, so this length of chain was going slower for some reason. So we're going to check the rest. And it looks like they're all at 14 now. Okay, now this was kind of a weird thing because it hurt the ratings. The coasters, I've noticed this before, like you can test it and get a rating and it changes. But also just doing little things like changing the chain speed or the launch speed off the platform, which you can customize. I've had increasing the speed off the launch pad has actually lowered my excitement rating for a coaster, and I honestly don't even know why. Now, one thing that I forgot to do, and we're going to come back to it in a little bit, but I did not smooth the coaster, and that is something you can do. And I highly recommend it because not only can it help reduce nausea ratings, sometimes it boosts your excitement a little bit too. So I just didn't think about it at this point. What we're going to do now is work on placing the coaster, because what I intend to do is lift it. And that way we'll get a little bit of a scenery boost for these cues from the track itself. And also I won't need quite so long an entry queue. So obviously we're elevating it here, and I'm just trying to figure out like where to place it so that the queue, when it comes down, won't be completely in a ridiculous placement. And this was the best I could figure out. Now I have no idea what other people do when they're trying to plan something like this. I don't, I'm doing it by eye. I'm doing it by feel. And so I decided to have the entrance on one side and the exit on the other, so that the two queues won't get in each other's way quite so badly. And unfortunately, that did flush our test results, so we have to do all that again, which kind of sucks, but it's all right. This coaster is such an important thing for us. It's so critical to get this right, because if we do, then this is going to earn a tremendous amount of money over the life of the park. And if we screw it up, it's a tremendous cash drain instead. So with its stats, I feel pretty good about it. At this point, it's more, you just don't want to screw up the queue so that it looks totally terrible. I've said many times, we are going to, at some point, kind of dismantle things in their current location and redo it. I want to create distinct themed areas, but I need more rides, more variety, and then also the money to do scenery the way I want. So we're doing this as kind of an interim thing, but that doesn't mean I want it to look like absolute crap either. The coaster was still in test mode, and I got what was fairly obviously an erroneous result, where the excitement was over 7 and then nausea bounced up for some inexplicable reason, although still at a pretty low level. And probably just because I had been working on it for so long at this point, and I really wanted a rating over 7, I went ahead and just immediately stopped testing and tried to lock that rating in. I don't really know if that would work or not as far as how guests would perceive the coaster, but it was kind of a moment of weakness where I was attempting to game the system. And we're going to come back to it in just a little bit and, do it the right way. As you can see, we get to claim rewards for finishing the coaster. We satisfied 2 separate challenges, so that was nice. And it's kind of time to catch up on what's going on in the park. The nice thing is we're making money, even though I've really left it on autopilot. and haven't been paying the kind of attention, well, I won't say that I should have, because it's pretty absorbing when you build a coaster. But it's still not great. And we had one of our janitors quit, unfortunately, while I was absorbed. So we're going to go ahead and train up the one who hasn't quit. But now we have to hire somebody new. And obviously that's more expensive than just keeping somebody happy in the first place. So I wasn't exactly thrilled with that. But thrilled or not, that's what we had to do. So I guess next time I'm building a coaster, I'll try. Well, it's going to be difficult, but I will at least try to do a better job of monitoring the situation. Now here, it's like I completely forgot the stupid interface for hiring a new person. And it took me a few tries. What I was trying to do was drag the portrait. And all you need to do is just click on it and let go of the mouse cursor, and then you get to drop them. But I kept trying to just drag that portrait off to a different area of the screen. That doesn't work so well. But we did get him hired, and we got him assigned, to the correct area. And so we're good. Now, going forward, I won't be building a coaster, at least not in the immediate future. So I can pay a little bit more attention to what's going on. So let's check. The mechanic is another one we have who's a little unhappy. So we're going to give him a promotion and then a small pay raise. There you go. And this guy is not unhappy, but we're going to train him up, because every time you level up one of your mechanics, what happens is when he inspects a ride, it gets back more of its health, for lack of a better term. Every time they inspect a ride, it gets kind of healed from wear and tear. And the higher level he is, the more it gets back, if that makes sense. Okay, so I want to see what people think when they're looking at either going on or, when they're getting off. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just check our rosters. But before we forget, we first have some other business to take care of. What we're trying to do here is add the coaster to this work roster. Very important to inspect this, because obviously we don't want it to break down. And that is one of the issues with work rosters. When you create it, if you're careful, that's great. But it's not like it knows what to do when you add a new ride. You have to manually tell the game, hey, now I want the mechanic to come here. And the amazing thing is, I think we're up to 8 rides now, and we're probably getting very close to needing a third mechanic. Just the way the time passes in the game and inspecting takes a certain amount of time, you can only do so much, especially if you have rides that have a lot of wear and tear on them. Or let me put that another way. Some rides, by their nature, as they run, they wear out more quickly. So, for example, the carousel will have relatively little wear and tear on it over the same amount of time compared to Wild Blue, or what did we rename Wild Blue to? Oh, I forgot. Kamikaze Blue. Sorry. So what about guest needs? Overall, not too bad. They always say they want more food and drink, even though the lines at the current food and drink are pretty short, so they could easily go there if they wanted to. And see, there's another ride breaking down, which is a little bit upsetting. So let's see. So I wanted to see, the guest was pretty happy after going on here. I wanted to, but made a comment about being expensive. So we're going to drop the price a little bit. I've noticed this before. You have to be careful about charging too much too early. Later, as the park gets more crowded, it seems like you can start raising prices. But early on, you can't. You can't get too greedy. And I'm not quite sure why they get more tolerant of the pricing later, but they seem to. So, yeah, so in general, the comments seem to be positive. I mean, there's not much of a line yet, but I like that people are going on there in a nice steady flow. That's for sure. And the mechanics, even if maybe I don't have enough to do as many inspections as I want, but it does seem like when one breaks, the repairs happen in a pretty reasonable time frame. Now, I said we would come back to the coaster and edit it again, and we are, and we'll rerun the test. So first step is the smoothing. So we're just selecting the entire track, and then we're going to click smooth banking and then smooth all. And now we'll rerun the test, and hopefully this will help. We're going to speed it up, because I don't really need for this to take all day. And let's see the excitement heat map. So it seemed like that really gave us a bump, but then again, like, is that number real? So you see the next strain pulls in and it drops way back down. And this is always my concern with this, is that until you get a number of runs through, you just don't know what the real rating is going to be. But the good news is that everything's in the green. That is very important. I'm not in love with some of those G-force numbers, but the reality is if it's not going to punish us too hard, then how much do you really care, to put it bluntly? We're in the high sixes at this point. That's very good. I mean, I'd love to be over 7, but I'm not going to sit here and obsess over it. So we're just under 6.9. The fear is almost perfect. I think 5 is like the true perfect spot, and we're pretty close to that. And the nausea is well in the green. So overall, I'm very happy with this coaster, and I just always think it's funny that building a really simple, no loops, no big, huge things, you can make a really, really attractive coaster for people that way. So, yeah, you can you save yourself a lot of headaches. Now, this janitor, there's something wrong, because he's just standing around. And that is not really what I'm going for. So, what is up with that? Let's look at the... okay. So, I forget the user interface, but we get there. So, unfortunately, this work roster contains nothing. I don't know what I did wrong the last time I adjusted it, but obviously we have to fix that. So we're going to select everything. Now the carousel, again, like, this game just does not want to let me select it. I don't know if this happens to everybody, but it's very consistent for me across multiple theme parks. I click and I click and I click, and it just doesn't want to do it. And then eventually it'll just work. But it makes me pay for it. There we go. So having successfully selected it, we can simply click through the rest, and we're going to give him a nice little work area here in this part of the park. And now he should just work. And yeah, so this one is fine. It was only the other one. And again, I don't know how it got out of whack. I'm sure it was my fault. I probably just misclicked something, and I thought I still had a bunch of stuff selected, and I didn't. That's far more likely than the game having some strange glitch where it just wiped that out. Anything in here? The main thing is that we were very profitable last month. So that was nice to see. We spent a lot of money to build the coaster, but we actually have way more money now than when we started. And so that's pretty cool because this coaster, I'm pretty sure, is going to be making significant bank. And so we are going to have some financial firepower. You know, we need to start thinking about what else we're going to build. Because in the very beginning, you are seriously constrained by a lack of cash when you're in challenge mode. But we bought ourselves some breathing room. So see, $2,100 in profit last month. And I'm not even sure it was open the whole month. So that's pretty awesome in my book. All right, I think this is a natural stopping point. So that's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching. I hope we see you next time.